So first, let's start with our subject. In the 1961-62 season, Wilt Chamberlain was 25 years old and was in his third season in the NBA. He finished as the MVP runner-up this year as he averaged a mind-blowing 50.4 points, 25.7 rebounds, and 2.4 assists on 50.6% shooting. It's really unfortunate that blocks and steals were not officially tracked until 1973, because I'm sure those numbers would have been monstrous as well. A couple things to consider is the fact that he played an average of 48.5 minutes per game, which are more than the amount of minutes that are in a regulation length game, which was only possible because of all the overtime games he participated in that year. Outside of one regular season game where he had been ejected, Wilt played every single minute of every single game of the 1961-1962 season. Beyond that, he also averaged an NBA record 17 free throw attempts per game. Now, Wilt wasn't shy about getting his shots up. That season, he attempted a jaw-dropping 39.5 shots per game. For some perspective, LeBron James is the NBA's all-time leading scorer, and in the entirety of his 22-year NBA career, he has never had a single game where he attempted at least 39 shots. And again, Wilt averaged 39.5. With this Herculean effort, Wilt led his Philadelphia Warriors to a 49-31 record. Now, although he was the focal point of the offense, contrary to popular belief, he wasn't completely on his own. He had two all-star teammates in Paul Arizin and Tom Gola. Three of his teammates averaged double-digit shot attempts per game. But with that being said, if you combined the Warriors' second, third, and fourth scoring options, they still barely eclipsed the amount of shots that Wilt was attempting on his own. So with that in mind, even if you give Wilt a competent supporting cast, he's still going to get an absurd amount of shots up. Now let's look at some of the aspects that made the 1962 season so unique on a league-wide level. For one, the pace of play was utterly insane. Teams were running the fast break so often that it made the 80s Showtime Lakers look slow by comparison. In this modern NBA, teams are averaging 117.1 points per game on 89.2 shots per game. In the 61-62 season, teams were averaging a similar 118.8 points per game, but on a far greater 107.7 shot attempts a night. This might look puzzling at first, but it makes sense, because field goal percentages are higher in the modern league, meaning more of those shots are going in, and 37 of those shots are three-point attempts, compared to 0 in 1962 due to the fact that the three-point line didn't even exist in the NBA yet. These are numbers that do not benefit Wilt in the modern game, because I highly doubt that he would be a three-point shooter, and there's 20 less shots being taken per team, meaning that's certainly going to take out a major chunk of his scoring. Now, as far as Wilt's offensive game on an individual level, how does that translate to the modern NBA? Well, I believe quite well. Contrary to popular belief, Wilt was not always a brute, punishing physical force like Shaquille O'Neal was. Now sure, Chamberlain had moments where he simply overpowered guys, but he also had a lot more grace and finesse to his game. For one, Wilt had a nearly unstoppable fadeaway jumper. With his borderline Olympian leaping ability, and with his 7'1" stature and his 7'8" wingspan, it was nearly impossible to block his shot, as he could get a good look at will. Add in his tremendous finger roll, his physical strength, and even his court vision that kept defenses honest, and my conclusion is that there's simply no center in today's NBA that could stop this guy from getting his. Now, one of the biggest questions about Wilt's scoring in the modern NBA is how many minutes is he playing per game? Well, obviously, this is one of the biggest factors in determining what kind of numbers he would be putting up. For example, Michael Jordan averaged 37.1 points per game in 1987, and Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50.4 points in 1962. But if you put both of those players' averages in a per 36 minutes stat line, now suddenly it goes from a 13-point gap to a 4-point gap. Now, I often hear people assume that Wilt would play less minutes in the modern NBA, given how everyone is so conscious of health and protecting their star players. The thing is, although stars played more minutes in generations past, it's not like Wilt was doing something that was common in that era. Other than Wilt, no one has ever come close to playing all 48 minutes on a nightly basis, whether it's this modern game or in the 1960s. Here's the most important detail about that though. Even the coaches back then didn't think it was a wise idea for Wilt to play all 48 minutes, but it was Chamberlain who forced their hand. In the 1961-62 season, the Warriors had a rookie head coach in Frank McGuire. Prior to that season starting, the two had a private meeting where Wilt demanded to play all 48 minutes per game. And who was going to tell the best individual player in the league otherwise? Players run this modern NBA, and if Wilt could force his will then I absolutely believe he could force his will now. And to be honest, I think it would be even easier for him to play that many minutes in this modern NBA. Again, there's 20 less shots taken per team, meaning the pace of play is much slower, which also means that Wilt isn't running up and down the floor as many times as before. Plus, there's more three-point shots on the perimeter, which means that there's more plays where Wilt isn't even a part of the action. So if anything, he would have even more energy available to him in this current era compared to what he had in the 1960s. If Wilt wanted to play all 48, then I have no reason to think that he wouldn't. In conclusion, even on a great team, Wilt is getting his minutes, and he's getting a lot of shot attempts. But I do think his scoring would naturally go down quite a bit, because 20 less shots are available per team per game, and of the remaining 90 shots, about 35 to 40 of them are going to be three-point shots, which means there's roughly 55 two-point shots per game instead of 107 in 1962. Obviously, most of those remaining two-point shots are going to go to Wilt, but not necessarily all of them. Based on all of this, I think his shot attempts are plummeting from 39.5 per game to about 30 per game. His free throw attempts are also going to drop a bit because now there's less action around the post and painted area since more of the ball handling is on the perimeter. With 48 minutes of action, he's still going to lead the league in free throw attempts. But instead of 17 a night, I think it's going to be about 14. When you do all of the math on his shot attempts and efficiency, I have prime Wilt Chamberlain averaging roughly 38.5 points per game in the modern NBA, making him easily the game's leading scorer. But that's not the only part of his stats that we're looking at. Wilt was also setting records for rebounds, and even more so than his scoring, this aspect is going to take a very, very dramatic shift. As I mentioned earlier, the pace of play was blisteringly fast in the 1960s, which resulted in nearly 40 more shot attempts per game, which meant that more rebounds were up for grabs, but it wasn't just the pace of play that added to the numbers, but it was also the lower field goal percentages. Quicker shots means less selective shots, which naturally tanks efficiency. Beyond that, many players in the 60s were still developing fundamentally sound jump shots. In today's NBA, teams are hitting 46.8% of their shots, and in 1962, that number was 42.6%. All of these variables showed up in the numbers. Today, the average team is getting 44.2 rebounds per game, and in 1962, they were getting 71.4. That means that roughly 55 more rebounds were up for grabs per game in 1962. Plain and simple, the early 1960s were a dream scenario for elite rebounders, which is why 4 players in a 9-team league were able to average at least 19 rebounds per game. If Wilt plays in this modern NBA, and especially if he plays all 48, then I still believe he's leading the league in rebounds per game. But instead of 26 a night, I think he's getting about 16. So ultimately, yes, Wilt Chamberlain would be an unstoppable and dominant force in the modern NBA, and he would definitely be in the conversation for the title of the best player in the league. And man, would I love to see the matchups between him and Nikola Jokic, and between him and Victor Wembanyama. But as far as the numbers, yeah, they'd be insane. But they're not quite the biblical proportions that they were in the 1960s, that's for sure. So what do you guys think? Would Wilt Chamberlain be the best player in the league if he played today? I look forward to hearing your thoughts.